everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Endless Spiral podcast. I am, as always, your host, Keith Russell. This is the show where I focus on all mental health topics, including people who have a story to tell, and of course, I try and chat to experts in their chosen field as well. So on today's episode, we're going to be chatting about intuitive eating. You've probably heard me mention this 100 times, and I've had loads of questions about it. So I thought to myself, look, don't put me trying to answer them. Let's get an expert on, and she could talk about it instead. So on today's show, I have Sinead Crowe from Intuitive Eating Ireland. So Sinead, thanks very much for coming on. How are you?
Thanks so much, Keith, for having me on. I feel really honoured that I might be referred to as an expert in intuitive eating, but I will say that I'm not, despite I do talk a lot about it, but I'll try my best to answer any questions.
Right, okay. Well, look, you know more than me, so you're an expert to me.
Yeah.
It's just not on your LinkedIn page, but we'll call you that for today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've just finished the training with Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch, but I just wouldn't refer to myself as an expert in any capacity. But anyways, here we are. I'll do my best.
Look, we'll go easy on you. Look, as I said, you know more than me, so look, it'll be a start. I mean, look, it's only a 40-minute podcast. We'll do our best to waffle through this. Right. So come here. Look, as I said, intuitive eating. Do you want to kind of give people, I suppose, a bit of an explanation in your own words what exactly it is?
Yeah, so intuitive eating it was put together by two dietitians who obviously had their own practice at the time, and they were seeing clients themselves for weight loss, and they were seeing the same thing year in, year out, where people would lose weight initially on the prescribed diet, and then they would come back in the following year and the weight regained, etc. So they started looking into the research around dieting, and they obviously, when they delved into it, discovered that actually diets are successful for long-term weight loss for a very small percentage of the population. And they came away from it and they put together this framework. So it's like 10 guiding principles that basically allow us to tune inwards. So they allow us to tap back into what's going on in our body and what our body is trying to tell us in terms of what it needs and what it would feel good eating, etc., and moving, etc. And it kind of allows us to unplug from all of the external diet culture noise, all of the outside noise that tells us, this is what you should be eating, this is bad, this is good. It shines a light on that, and we get to kind of say, right, yeah, that's all diet culture. Okay, come back in, what's going on in my body? So it's really like a self-care, mind-body framework. And yeah, it can take a lot of work, because of course for some of us, and definitely for me, like when you're dieting, and I dieted for 20 years, and the dieting resulted in me binge eating. I was never like formally diagnosed with binge eating disorder or anything like that. I never sought professional help or assessment. And I think that's important to highlight, that actually only up to 15% of people with issues with food actually seek professional help. So the statistics that we even currently have about eating disorders are like way off. It's much higher than that. So so I began binge eating in my early 20s when I started Weight Watchers. So look at, like, probably lots of your listeners here, like there's the big high, the adrenaline rush, the first diet you ever go on, isn't there? Like you lose the weight, it seems so easy. You're like, this is piece of cake. You can see yourself shrinking nearly overnight, and people are praising you, and oh my God, what are you doing? You look great. So it's like this adrenaline. So the first diet we ever go on, it's such a hook, because we nearly, there's this fantasy that each diet is going to be like that. But actually what most of us discover, and certainly I did, is every diet got harder and harder. And with every diet, my binging got worse and worse. And I suppose, I kind of done that for, I guess, 20 years. And when I kind of got into my 30s, I suppose, is it wisdom? Is it age? Is it the fact that I had 4 kids? I don't know what it was, but something hit me. And I was like, is this what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing? Like pursuing this smaller body? Like it just consumed everything. And, I remember, like, my grandmother was I'm not sure, actually, could have been my sister's wedding or a cousin's wedding. And she's in her 80s. Like, she plays golf 3 times a week. She is an excellent role model of a grandmother. I mean, she's just brilliant. And yet she was like, I have to go back to Weight Watchers for this wedding. And I just thought, I cannot be in my 80s, nearly my 90s, thinking that I have to go to Weight Watchers. I just can't do it. So I guess that's like myself and my sister were very close in age, and we've always been, as cheesy as it sounds, like we're best friends and we do everything together. So we both were kind of at this similar point where it was like, surely there's more to life. Like we were so bored about talking about dieting. Like it's the most boring conversation ever to be talking about your diet. I just thought, okay, that's it. We're putting a ban on the diet talk. Like we're not going to bond over this anymore. And diet bonding is a real issue for lots of family members and friends and work colleagues. So I was like, we're not going to bond over this anymore. And I had heard about the intuitive eating framework like in my 20s, but at the time I wasn't ready to let go of dieting, because I really thought, no, I'll definitely at some point lose the weight and keep it off. Like I was full sure there had to have been some like magic cure that I just hadn't found yet. So I wasn't ready to let it go. So obviously, as you probably know, like intuitive eating is not aligned with dieting. I mean, that's the first principle, is reject the diet mentality. So it is really about letting go of that idea of, that diets work, essentially. So so I wasn't ready in my 20s, but then obviously in my 30s and talking to Gillian, we were like, yeah, I mean, I really want to come back in to what's right for me and my body and in my life right now. And I think probably lots of different things helped. Like I was maybe meditating in my 30s and I was doing yoga in my 30s. So there was a couple of things that I was probably, I like had planted the seed that actually, God, my body knows what it wants and what it needs. So yeah, we just like read obviously the intuitive eating book, and I'd done the workbook, and then I couldn't really find anybody else in Ireland that was kind of talking about this. Now there are loads, but at the time, obviously, I didn't know anybody on Instagram. So myself and Gillian were like, feck it, will we just set up an Instagram page and just talk about what we're learning? And that's what we done. And that was like 2 years ago. And we were probably 8 or 9 months into the journey ourselves. So yeah, it's like for me, it's nearly 3 years on now since I began my intuitive eating journey. And honestly, like, I don't know, does it sound a bit dramatic or a bit wild, but like, it's like, I can't really describe. It's like I got my life back. It's kind of like I got to know what's important, I just freed up so much of my mental space. I mean, like, I often say to people like on Instagram, like, if you were to give yourself a percentage of how much of your thoughts every day are consumed by your body or what you're going to eat or what you're not going to eat. And honestly, there was a time that I would probably have said my percentage was about 85% a day, I would say. Yeah. And it's probably down around 10 or 15 now, I would say, which it's like, that's a big drop, right?
Massive. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Jesus Christ. Wow. I mean, it's just as you were talking there about like the diet culture, and I suppose as the reason, well, maybe not the reason, but one of the factors why they don't last is because people do them for the wrong reasons. Because like, look, I've been there myself, and they don't last. And even I was nearly going to use the word exercise, and we had your mate Niamh Orbinski on the podcast twice, and she gives out to me for using the word exercise.
Movement.
I have to use the word movement. I have to practice my terminology and my language. But anyway, I had a terrible a relationship with movement and food for so long. And I suppose that's, and until I developed, I was able to develop a healthy relationship with myself, I could develop a healthy relationship with food. So I was like, when I was moving or exercising, I was doing it for the neck down, so for appearance rather than from the neck up, so like I said, I kind of do it to affect how I feel rather than to affect how I look. I suppose that would be kind of somewhere where you'd be with your intuitive eating, would it?
Yeah, of course. And it's like this, movement is a huge part of the intuitive eating framework. There's a full principle on intuitive movement, or finding movement that feels good. And it's not that exercise is a bad word. I mean, I'm not going to give out to you for using the word exercise, but I think typically we do associate the word exercise with kind of calories burnt, and kind of like a way to burn our food that we've maybe eaten at the weekend. So like, because there's a lot of negative associations with the word exercise for some people, and not for everybody, of course, but for a lot of people there are. I think movement brings about this idea, actually, it's not about pounding the treadmill to burn 500 calories. You can find, you see swimming, like yoga, walking in nature, like there's ways to find movement that actually is, as you said, is hugely beneficial for your head, for your mind, for your emotional well-being. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I brought that up was because I posted a picture on Instagram one day, and there's like this, the sweat was dripping off me, and I had been doing the hoovering, and I posted it, and it was Neve who messaged me, says, "Hey, see, it's movement. You can get your steps in, you can get your exercise by not exercising, if you know what I mean, by just moving." So I was doing housework. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
and I felt great after it. Do you know what I mean? So I completely know where Neve was coming from with it. But I suppose,
totally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go on.
I think that, I think as well, for many people, dieting goes hand in hand with exercise. So when they're on the diet bandwagon, they're also exercising. They're probably going to some gym or doing some program. And I think the key is that movement is important for life. And if you find something you want to do and that doesn't feel like punishment, well, then you're much more likely going to do that long term. And what happens then is, for a lot of people, when the diet goes, so does the exercise. So they lose out. You know what I mean? They go back to maybe behaviors that are more sedentary behaviors that actually won't serve them at all, mentally, physically, emotionally. So I think that's the key of finding movement that actually just feels good in your body. And it's likely you will engage in that, moving forward. We know the people that engage, I know so many people that do go to the gym for their head, and then people don't have to use every ounce of willpower to get out the door because they want to go. They can't wait to go in the evening to lift weights, or, and I have a similar relationship with, in fairness, it's probably something I've personally not struggled with. And I feel really lucky about that, because I never had a bad relationship with movement. I was always quite, I wouldn't say sporty at school. I was probably the slowest one in the teens, but I played camogie and I played lots of different sports, and I love going hiking. And to be honest, it's for me, when people say, how do you love to go out so often? I can't wait to get going. To leave 4 kids at home, you don't have to ask me twice. I'm gone. See you later. Can't wait to get going. But that's because I'm doing it not for, it's my time out. It's my escapism. It's my headspace. And it's not about, wanting to look a certain way, which I think is just the game changer if you're going to look at movement.
It completely is. And that's what has changed my mindset is so. And the reason, I was in the in the same category as so many other people. If you stopped working out or stopped exercising, the diet went out the window. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd have a back injury, which I have now, but I'd have an injury or whatever I'd have, and I couldn't exercise or couldn't work out or go to gym or whatever for a few weeks. And the wheels would completely come off, because I would associate my diet with how I would look. So I'm well, if I'm not working out, what's the point in that? Because I had, they were just, the two of them were so interlinked with me. And then since I started realizing, that I'm doing it for how I feel, it's been amazing. So if I'm I have a back injury at the moment, and okay, my diet's not amazing, but I've been trying to follow the intuitive eating concept, where I give myself a bit of a break. And if I need something, I'll have it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not stressing about, oh God, because before I'd be completely obsessive about it. As you said earlier on, you'd be thinking what'd you say, 85% of the day, you'd be completely consumed by what time are you eating, or how much you eating, how many calories will it be? If I have this amount of calories, I'll have to work out later on. And if I work out too late, all this type of stuff. And it's mentally and physically draining. It's not sustainable. And you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. I think a good question to actually ask yourself is, if you're unsure if you've got a good or an unhealthy relationship with exercise, a good question to ask yourself is, if I had an injury and I was told to rest for 2 weeks, would that induce a lot of guilt, anxiety, worry, etc. about your body? And maybe in relation to food, then would there be compensation in terms of what you would do with your food? And if it's a case that the answer is yes, then potentially there is something there in relation to you're using food as a way to manipulate your body. And ultimately, as you just rightly mentioned, it does cause a lot of stress. I mean, if we're injured or we find it difficult to take a rest day, like a lot of people would find it really difficult to have a rest day, even though rest days where you don't engage in any major movement that's getting your heart rate up is actually important as well. Rest is equally as important. And we're kind of, we find it difficult, I think, to allow ourselves that rest a lot of the time. I think so. It's a good thing to reflect on.
Yeah, I used to get completely stressed, and then like I had planned on doing so many stuff over Christmas, and I just felt burnt out, and I took a break, and I said, right, that's it, no more, I'm done. And I felt okay with it. Where before I'd be stressing about it, thinking, oh geez, I have to, do this and that, and I'm not gonna look the same, or all this type of just nonsense. And I felt okay about it, and I waited until I was fully recharged, and now I'm back, chatting to you on this podcast, and I'm back feeling much better.
Yeah.
But before I would keep going because you'd nearly be feeling anxious about being anxious, and you'd be, or you feel you're not doing this and you're not doing that, and then you're burnt out, and then you get nowhere, and then you can do absolutely nothing. Do you think there's enough people in Ireland, or maybe that's probably the wrong way of putting it, do you think there's enough conversations in Ireland about intuitive eating?
Well, obviously not near enough. Near enough. I do think it's growing. I mean, it's definitely growing, and I do think more people are becoming aware of diet culture and fad diets. But I think we have to be careful that we're not moving from obvious fad diets like Weight Watchers and Slimming World to more of like, wellness culture, which is really often just diet culture in disguise, but it looks all flowery because we talk about like, this is healthy and clean and organic and, all the rest of it. And you're like, oh, we have to be careful, because I fell into that trap, I done a diploma in nutrition a couple of years ago, and I had gone from diet culture, but just very quickly fell deep into wellness culture. And actually, I would probably say it was more stressful having everything to be quote unquote perfect all of the time, like your food perfect all the time. But I do think the conversation is starting. More people are asking the questions, I think, about the negative implications of dieting. So it's growing, but I hope it needs to grow faster, because we still have we still have Operation Transformation on our television screens in 2022, the 15th season, where they're coming on and they're advising the public to follow approximately a 1,500 calorie diet. I still cannot believe this is happening. So when that's still happening, I think so. Yeah, I was just saying that like we are a long way off understanding the harms of recommending, these really low calorie diets. And we're also a long way off of separating weight and health, because unfortunately we are living in a society that equates weight with health. And we need to be able to pick this apart and understand they're two very different things. I mean, weight is one determinant of your health, but there are over 100 factors that determine your health. Like very much socioeconomic is a huge one, but there are so many issues, genetics, etc. And then also there are over 50 factors that determine your weight. So we also have to come away from this idea that like weight is within one individual's control. It's really not as simple as that. There's so much more nuance to that conversation that I think we still hear this message like just eat less and move more and that will reduce your weight. That is just not the case. And I really wish this was this was discussed more. The public were aware of it.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm absolutely so glad you said that, because that was something that used to stress me out for so long, and that's one of the. I'm so glad you said that. That is one of the main things that has kind of reduced my stress and anxiety over myself and how I look. And I mean, obviously, all the other stuff that we talked about, but the genetics thing is massive, because obviously, for years, and you know my story, and everyone else probably does at this stage, the body dysmorphia and all that type of stuff. And I just hated certain things about me. And it's only recently I actually bothered to sit down and go, it's genetics. And the reason why I've been more aware of that is because I've got 3 small kids at the moment, and my son and my eldest girl have the exact same body shape as I had, and they have done nothing wrong. As in, they've done nothing. It's just it's your genetics, it's your body shape. And if only I had have realized that sooner, I might have been a bit less stressed about it. And
Totally.
I'm so, because as you said, so many people just don't realize that.
Exactly the same way, like we're not told to try and change our shoe size or our height,
Brilliant.
but we're and or the color of our eyes, and the reality of it is we know that genetics plays a huge role in our body shape and size. Up to like 70% of it's determined by our genes. So like that is absolutely huge. And there was an excellent, twin studies are fantastic for this because it really shows us how genes play such a prevalent role in our body size. They done this like 4-month-long study with like, I think it was 12 or 15 sets of twins. And basically they gave them all the exact same diet for the 4 months, all of the sets of twins. They obviously increased it because they wanted them to gain weight. So they gave them lots of calories for a couple of months. And they looked at the end there was a variance of between less than a 10-pound weight gain and a 30-pound weight gain, but each set of twins was the exact same. So like, okay. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. So between all of the sets of twins, it could range 20 pounds weight in the difference between different sets of twins. But like, obviously each set of the twins was the same. And even when they lost weight, they showed the exact same thing. So they then put them on a lower calorie diet to lose the weight, and it still varied that much. But the twins together obviously were the exact same. I just found that fascinating when I heard that.
So they were all doing the same diet. I presume they're all doing the same exercise or whatever they are doing. But so the only difference in the study was the genetics.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
I think no, it is. It's huge, but yet it's something that we still come back to this kind of nonsense that it's all within our control. And I think that message is really harmful because that message significantly contributes to weight stigma. It's how society views people in bigger bodies. We have these inherited anti-fat attitudes and anti-fat biases towards people in bigger bodies because we are told all everywhere that you can just lose weight and it's that simple. Well, it's not that simple, and it's not what we're being told, and that's really harmful. I mean, literally, weight stigma is killing people, and we have a huge issue with weight stigma in society, and it causes untold stress to an individual. And again, like Operation Transformation, people are asking us, like, what's your problem with it? Why don't you just turn it off? Well, I wish we could just turn off weight stigma, but it's not as simple as that. And as long as a show that's focused solely on weight loss, and they've tried to disguise it by, this year in particular, by throwing in lots of other goals, etc., to make it look a bit more palatable and holistic. But ultimately, it's a weight loss show. And the research has been done on like things like The Biggest Loser, which is obviously that's been cancelled. But like they've done studies from the viewers at home from these shows, the weight loss shows, and it shows that people that are watching it at home, their own anti-fat biases increase when they're watching weight loss shows. So actually, it's detrimental to everybody in society, but obviously particularly those in marginalized bodies. So that's why I have such a huge issue with this show. But anyways, that's another rant for another day. Rant for that.
I know. Yeah. Well, I will put, because I know you have a petition. Is the petition still running? I presume it is it?
It is. Now we are going to be delivering it soon, but I would love to get it to 10,000 signatures. So if anybody is happy to sign it, it's over 9,000 now, and it's on our Instagram page. The link is in our bio. Right.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put the link to that in the description of this podcast. And if I put this up on YouTube, I'll pop it up there as well.
Thank you.
And we'll do a few plugs at the end of this as well for your Instagram, and you have a website as well, haven't you? Or you did?
No, we've no
website.
No
just
website.
Instagram, right? Okay.
Just the gram.
Just Instagram, yeah. Well, look, we wrap this up soon, so I just want a few other things I want to cover.
Of course.
What do you? I mean, I suppose you said it earlier on that the diet culture in Ireland and that, but And I know I spoke to Barry from Bodywise on my own or on this podcast a while ago, and he
Oh,
was
very good.
and he was saying that obviously Ireland are way behind in legislation, in studies, in information, in pretty much everything. And as far as I remember, I think he said something, we take a lot of our stuff from Australia. I suppose, do you think that like we're just too far behind?
Well, yeah, we're definitely behind, and I mean, until the problem goes away, are we ever ahead? And that's the reality. And I think, but I do agree that we take a lot from the UK and Australia. I mean, look at again, go back to the show. Even the fact that we continue to air it and it's been sponsored by our state. The fact that that's still ongoing, but they have gotten rid of these shows in other countries tells me we are definitely way behind. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Because The Biggest Loser, I remember that was on in America. Was that on in the UK as well?
Yeah, in Australia as well. There's a different version of it in the UK, but they're all gone now. So, I mean, and gone for a number of years, actually. So,
okay, that's good. Yeah, I didn't realize that they were actually gone. I knew I hadn't seen them on the TV in a while. Right, a couple of things before we wrap this up. Men and eating disorders and diets and all that. Would you get many men messaging you? Obviously, I'm not going to name names or anything, but I'm just thinking just like statistic wise and that.
Oh, so like I was actually looking at this recently because it came up. I must have been talking to somebody else about this. So I wanted to check our it tells you how many stats or whatever in terms of, so like our population on our Instagram, which is like, it's a small online community, but there's 25 odd thousand, and it's less than 1% are male. But obviously that's an intuitive eating community. But in terms of like, we've seen an increase in men contacting us since the Unspoken documentary, which I'm sure you watched. The guys were excellent. So since we've seen more recently men speaking out, we've noticed it. And again, I'm sure there are, even at the Bodywise, if you look at the Bodywise page with the statistics, there was a marked increase in 2019-20 in terms of men presenting for eating disorders. And like, I do work in mental health, so I have been I suppose I used to see, I don't anymore. I recently started in maternity, so obviously that's all women. But prior to that, I was in adult, so it was adult community. So I was seeing, I myself felt like in more recent years, there were more men presenting with anorexia and body dysmorphia and body image issues that were kind of going to see a psychologist or were going to have an assessment by a psychiatrist. So I've definitely seen both, I suppose professionally I saw that, but also even on our own online community, I do think more men are probably finding it a bit safer to speak out about it, which I think is really key. You know, there's a lot of stigma associated with body image and eating disorders, and very much so for men. So I think, I mean, look, when we talk about anything in relation to mental health, there is unfortunately ongoing stigma. So, but I just hope having these conversations and the work you've done, Keith, is great. And, you know, I'm sure men are reaching out to you. I'm sure you may be seeing that more and more. So it's great to just have this conversation going. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to get your opinion on it, because obviously I know I always rob this phrase off Barry when he's on my podcast, but he said like men are the untold stories. And I always repeat that phrase because I just thought it was, I completely agree with it. And I just thought it was a nice way of putting it. You know, and obviously, like the guys on the Unspoken have been great, and I've been chatting to them myself, and I actually have myself and Cormac have something coming up in a few weeks, so no spoilers, but myself and Cormac are working on something to be on the end of February. I can't say any more than that. So like we're doing our best to get the word out on stuff, but I mean, it's good. It's good to see that there's a bit more conversations happening anyway.
I do think so.
Right, we're nearly there. I wanted to ask you about kind of yourself and your sister. Obviously, set up Intuitive Eating Ireland, but like, how have you been with the lockdown and your sister? Like how have you been locked up, and like, have you been okay with stuff in general?
To be honest, we haven't been locked up because we're both working the HSE, so we both work. Yeah, so we haven't been. I wouldn't have minded doing a bit from home, but unfortunately, we didn't get that. But no, I mean, like, yeah, look at. I'm really blessed. Honestly, I want to like if I was living in a city and maybe didn't have space and couldn't get out and the kids were cramped inside. I mean, we are so lucky where we live. We live in the country. My husband has a farm. My kids were farming all the time when they weren't in school. Like I really am blessed. So I cannot say, obviously there was the bigger, wider societal issues and there's different politics that are happening all the time in work, etc. I mean, look, it's not been easy. And to be honest, the morale of healthcare staff has definitely, we're seeing burnout definitely, and the morale has definitely dropped, and it's not probably a great place to work like it used to be. But I'm hoping that will turn around. But I do believe we're going to need to funnel a huge amount of money and resources into mental health, because this is going to be, in my opinion, the epidemic following this pandemic, that mental illness, mental health issues, anxiety is through the roof for so many people. Like hand on heart, that's why I'm saying I'm so lucky. But I also think for the last couple of years, or many years now, I do have lots of practices. Like people do say to me, like, you look like you've got more than 24 hours in your day or whatever. And I'm like, do I help? But there are things that are like that I prioritize. So like I do get up early. I set my alarm early. I get up and do my yoga, my meditation. There are things that are like non-negotiable, because I don't function with 4 kids and working full time unless I am in bed at 9:30. I mean, I'm the total granny. I go to bed really early, but that's because I get up early. And I do think for me, it works. And it's probably what's kept me feeling reasonably well throughout all of this. So I do feel really lucky. And walking in nature and sea swimming, and these are the things that, you know, once you start and you see the benefits, you kind of don't really ever go back. You just stay going doing it.
Yeah, the amount of people I know who have started the sea swimming, but you've actually covered the next question, which I was going to ask you. Mindfulness, and is there anything that else you do to help yourself? But you've literally just answered that. So, look, I do want to go back to the frontline worker thing. I hope you do realize, and most people do appreciate everything that you have done. I mean, you have been worked to the bone in the last few years, and like you have been incredible. Yeah, and I think, so well done.
I think as well, it's important to say like that. Yeah, it has been challenging, but ultimately that is our job and it's what we're trained for. But I think also, you know, and there's been a bit of conversation about that in the media recently, but I think that in relation to like, oh, you know, bonuses and all this kind of stuff, but actually so many people have been at home caring for loved ones, or they've had maybe children with, you know, special needs or autism, and they didn't have any resources. There was no respite, and there was nobody coming in for carers. There's huge carer burnout. People living on their own. Honestly, every single person, whether you were a frontline worker or not, like people that were going in working in shops, you know, to give us food and you know, let us go in and get petrol. I mean, look at the list is endless. Everybody has played a part. So I think while I totally appreciate, you know, I do appreciate that you know, that healthcare staff have worked hard, but so has everybody else in the public to keep going. You know, well done, everybody. That's what I say.
Yeah. Fair point. Right, let's do a few plugs before we let you shoot off. So we mentioned your petition, and we're going to pop that in the description of this. You're just on Instagram, so do you want to fire away with a few plugs for yourself, or have you just got the Instagram?
That's all we have. just the Instagram. So it's Intuitive Eating Ireland on Instagram, and that's basically it. We do a podcast as well, actually. We have we have a podcast. We're into season 2, but we've 10 episodes on season 1, and we only have 1 episode out so far in season 2. And the first season I done with Gillian, so it was just the 2 of us for the 10 episodes. And there is a lot about intuitive eating in obviously all the episodes. We cover quite a bit, like raising intuitive eaters. So if there's any mammies listening that want to hear about like kids and how to raise intuitive eaters, there's a full episode on that. There's a lovely episode on intuitive movement if you wanted to know more about that. And then this season, Gillian has ditched me, so she's hit the high road. So I wanted to stay going, but so I actually was really lucky. Like there was a girl that has been super, Rosetta, I have to give her a shout out, because she like is interested in producing podcasts. She has come to my rescue and basically produced the podcast for me. So
Brilliant.
Honestly, so lucky with her. But this season, I'm kind of interviewing different guests. So people with lived experience of living in a bigger body. I've got Nicola Salmon on. So she obviously sees women that are in bigger bodies that want to get pregnant and navigate fertility, the fertility journey, which I think is, oh my God, so key. So I've got lots of good guests coming in season 2. So that's the plug.
Wow. And you've done everything except give us the name of it.
Oh yeah, sorry, just the Intuitive Eating Ireland podcast.
Oh, it is, right, okay.
we kept it very simple now. We're simple people. We're simple people.
I probably should have just guessed that. Right, okay, I'm actually going to check that podcast out. Right, I think we're going to, yeah, I will, I definitely will. Right, we're going to wrap this up. Sinead, thanks very much for coming on. That was very, very fascinating and very interesting, because I had a few questions that I needed to ask, so I can copy and paste them and then give them to someone else that I can ask.
Well, you can look at, come back or ask me if there's something else I can help with. I'm a bit of a waffler, as I'm sure you've just seen. I just tend to go 90 miles an hour, so you might not have gotten half the questions asked, but
no,
if anybody...
You know, Lois, I was just going to say, we've covered everything. And look, you've made my job easy, so I don't have to say much. I just have to sit here and ask the questions.
Good.
And is anything that you want to add before we go?
No, I think that's it. No, thanks a million. Yeah, it would be great if we could get some more signatures or shares on our petition before we deliver it. They are talking about it in the Dáil. I'm actually, well, look, it's not going. This is going to have. I'm sure it's not going to be going out tonight, this podcast. But I'm actually speaking to Senator Annie Hoey this evening, and I think it's great that there are people that are that are involved, obviously, in policy making, that are starting to ask these questions. So I'm delighted that there may be some change going to be happening, or that we can at least shine a light on the harm of these kind of things like Operation Transformation. So thanks to any of your listeners who decide to sign it for us. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And good luck with that. It's a great initiative, really is. Right, we're going to shoot off. Thanks very much again, Sinead, for coming on the podcast today. And I'll be back again very soon with another episode of the Endless Spiral podcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Keith.